Hello, students. Welcome to Gyanvyar School of Education, Suresh Gyanvyar University. I'm Dr. Sonia Korbansal, and today I will be teaching you about the developmental task by Robert Havighurst. This is really a very important topic, students, so I hope you will listen attentively and grasp the concept. The learning objective of my class, that at the end of the class, you will be able to define the developmental task as what is developmental task and how you are going to define it, and you will also be able to discuss characteristics of developmental task, as well as you will be able to explain the sources of developmental task. All right, students, and you will be also able to describe the different developmental tasks during adulthood and old age. So, students, it's really very important for all of you to understand that the growth and development, it's a necessary part of human being. So when a human being grows, so how the person is actually identified with the environment, with the other factors during growth and development. So when we are specifically talking about developmental task, so it means that we are talking about what the particular task should be completed in a particular age. So we have many times studied about earlier stages of development. So Robert Havighurst has emphasized on this concept of the developmental tasks which are done in different stages. All right, students. So let's understand it in a more elaborative way. So first of all, let's understand about Robert Havighurst, who was he and how we are so concerned about his theory given by him long ago. So he was born on June 1900 in Day Prairie, Wisconsin. January 31, 1991, Richmond, Indiana. And he was a professor, physicist, educator, and aging expert as well. So when we are talking about him, so we have to be very particular that what it's all about Havighurst. So educational theory before Havighurst was actually basically he was he conducted this theory on school children. So learn by rote and little concern was given to low children how children developed. So from 1948 to 1953, he developed his highly influential theory of human development and education. So the crown jewel of his research was on developmental task as how the learner behaves or does different tasks in different stages as he grows. So, Robert James Havighurst was a professor, physicist, educator, and an aging expert. He worked and published well into his 80s, according to his family. Havighurst died of Alzheimer's of disease at the age of 90. And Robert Havighurst proposed that all individual progress through a series of developmental stages, each comprising a series of developmental tasks. It means that if it is a childhood or it is a adolescent or any other stage of human growth and development, so there are some particular tasks which have to be completed in that stage only. All right. So although these tasks can be learned at home or in other settings, maybe the environment, or maybe the society environment or the school environment or anything from the peer group, Havighurst maintained that the interrelated nature of developmental tasks suggests that educators should consider all developmental tasks of children and adolescents. So this is how, if we are understanding how a particular child is growing and how the learner is supposed to do a particular task in a particular age. So being a teacher, it would be rather very easy or comfortable with child to get used of all the things in the classroom teaching as well, and to solve the problems. All right, students. So I hope you are understanding. Now let's understand first of all what is a developmental task. So developmental tasks, the term was introduced first of all by Robert Havighurst in the 1950s. So a developmental task is something that arises predictably and consistently at or about a certain period in the life of individual. So having us talked about 1948 and 53 about developmental task, and he believed that learning is a basic to life. Every human being learns, but how, in what way, and in what stages, and that people continue to learn throughout life. So according to Havighurst, a developmental task is a task which an individual has to and wants to solve in a particular life period. Moreover, Havighurst writes in his work that a developmental task is the midway between an individual need and a society demand. So it assumes an active learner interacting with an active social environment as well. So just try to understand, students, that if the learner is understanding and if the learner is doing all the age related tasks properly, appropriately, then his next stage of life will be smoother and will be comfortable for him to live. And it will not only be comfortable for him, but it will also be comfortable for those who are associated closely with him. All right, so this is how that developmental task is very significant, that each stage is leading towards a particular task series, and that has to be completed in that stage only. And thus it is also an early and significant contributor to the emerging field of lifelong human development. Successful achievement of these tasks leads to the person's happiness. If the person is able to do the particular task in a particular specific age, then the person feels happy. And if he is not able to do that, that increases his anxiety. But if it is possible to do all the things, then it increases the probability of competency in the following task, like why failure leads to unhappiness in the individual, disapproval by society, and difficulty in later tasks. Then many psychological problems actually arise due to this problem. So Havighurst theory is really very, very important in present situation also. So the concept of developmental task assumes that human development in modern societies is characterized by a long series of tasks. So some of these tasks are located in childhood and then in adolescent, whereas other arise during adulthood and then old age. So there is a series of tasks which has to be learned and mastered by the learner in a particular age only. Okay, students. So let's understand the characteristics of developmental tasks, that how we are actually signifying them, and how can we say that developmental task is something that is leading person's life in a very happy mode, comfortable mode. So having us considered the many different aspects of a person's life that influence a person's development, the biological development and physical structure of the development, the society in which the person lives, and the resultant cultural influences. So, as well as the individual's personal characteristics, values, and goals. So, this view of developmental tasks takes into account the role of the physical maturation as well as then the role of the society, which plays in determining the skills that need to be learned at a certain age. Maybe it is childhood, adolescent, adulthood, or old age. All right. So, according to Havighurst, there are sensitive periods in the life which he called teachable moments. So, when an individual is mature enough to learn the developmental task, so in life, there are some moments which Havighurst played a very important part. So, these tasks may be physical, like walking, cognitive learning, learning like to read, or social, where person develops significant relationship. And once the critical period of development is over, learning may still occur. A language skills, for examples, continue to develop as one learns more complex ways of using the language. So this is how Havighurst has described the characteristics of developmental tasks. So understand it in a more good way that some tasks are same for everyone regardless of where you live, as they are about human biology. As eating food is a process that how is a for psychomotor activity that is the same for everyone. For example, learning to crawl or walk is pretty much same in all societies. We are not differentiating on this basis. So as it relies on genetic factors. So some tasks may be different in different societies. For example, some tasks may be different in different forms, like in different cultures, or it may exist in culture and not in other culture. So it is actually related to the culture of different societies. How do they live? How do they celebrate their particular festivities, and how do they develop in that way? So, to cite an example of the task getting an occupation are different in different cultures. In some cultures, an individual gets his job while the person is very young, while in other culture, the person may get a job after long education and training. So, this is how the developmental task is being defined. So, Havighurst added that biology and society have a lot of influence on person's development, but personal values of the people, family values of the people who prepare them have as much influences on identifying the task in developing the particular kind of task in a particular stage. So having us described his developmental task on middle class Americans. However, he did try to define a few points from lower socio-economic class and upper class as well. So this is how that Havighurst has chosen as sample for doing this study. Now let's understand the stages of development which are given by Havighurst. So Havighurst identified the following 6 major stages in human life. And what they are, you have to learn them. So first is infancy and early childhood, which sustains from birth till 6 years. Then second stage is actually related to middle childhood, which is sustaining from 6 to 12 years. Then third stage is related to adolescence, from 13 years to 18 years. Then next, early adulthood, 19 years to 30 years. Then middle age, 30 years to 60 years. So then last stage is later maturity, 60 and over. So these are the 6 stages of development, students, that we are going to understand in a very explained manner, that what is this particular stage and how a person should achieve doing the developmental task in a particular stage. So let's understand. Now, there are typical developmental tasks for each of these periods. So the developmental task concept has a long and rich tradition. Its acceptance has been partly due to recognition of sensitive periods in our lives and partly due to the practical nature of having a task. So, knowing that a youngster of a certain age is encountering one of the tasks of that period, learning an appropriate sex role helps adults to understand the child's behavior as well and establish an environment that helps the child to master the different tasks at a particular stage. And we can give another good example, that of acquiring personal independence. Personal independence, like doing the own work in our own method, own way. So an important task for the middle childhood period is considered about it. So youngsters test authority during this phase, and if teachers are parents and parents realize that this is normal and even a necessary phase of development, they react differently than when they see that uh, how it is done. So youngsters test authority during this phase, and if teachers and parents realize that this is normal and even a necessary phase of development, they react differently when they see it as a personal challenge. So this is really much understood by everyone, that there are typical developmental tasks in each of the periods. So one has to understand this concept that the developmental task is not a new thing which has to be understood by the prospective teachers or the learners only. It has its long and rich tradition. So acceptance must be there that in a particular stage, a particular type of task must be completed. So these are some actually sensitive periods which are leading to the learner in a very good way. So knowing that a youngster of a certain age is not actually able to do a particular kind of work is not possible, that how he is going to do that. All right. So now, for example, note having a developmental task for middle adulthood as well. So one of which is a parent's need to help children become happy and responsible adults. So adults occasionally find it hard to let go of their children. They want to keep their children with them far beyond any reasonable time for their own good as well as that of their children. Right, students? So, once they do, they can enter a happy time in their own lives if husband and wives are not only spouses and friends and partners as well. So let go of their children is something that hard to find, but it is really very important that how the children are actually growing up and they are adopting their age appropriate behavior. Now let's understand the sources of developmental tasks. So developmental tasks arise from three different sources. Havighurst 1948-53 in his psychosocial model, in the first important issue is biology, second is psychology, and the last one is sociology. So just understand the three different sources of developmental task is biology, psychology, and sociology. And Havighurst identifies three sources of developmental task in 1972. And first, some tasks are mainly based on physical maturation. Okay, so example like learning to walk, the child is starting learning at different stages. You may notice that each child is different. Each child speaks at different time duration. So this is how the child is learning to walk, talk, and behave acceptably with the opposite sex during adolescent as well. So adjusting to menopause during middle age. So these are the sources of developmental task. Now another source of developmental task involves personal values and aspirations. So these personal factors results from the interaction between ontogenetic and environmental factors. So they are considered very important and play an active role in the emergence of specific developmental tasks. For example, choosing a certain occupational pathway. Now, the third source which we have discussed about, that is sociology. So, it is relating to socio-structural and cultural forces. And such influences are based on, for instance, laws, examples, minimum age for marriage, and culturally shared expectations of development as well. So these tasks may be physical, like walking, cognitive, like learning to read, or social, where the person develops significant relationship once the critical period of development is over. So learning may still occur then. Language skills, for example, continue to develop as one learns more complex ways of using language. So understood, student? So first is biology, second is psychology, and third is sociology. And these three factors do actually work in a source, as a source for developmental task of a learner. Now, let's understand the different stages with the help of the pictures also as well. So, Havighurst identified six major stages in human life covering birth to old age. So, first is infancy and early childhood, which actually remains from birth of the child to the 6 years old. Then, middle childhood, 6 to 13 years old. Adolescent, 13 to 18 years old, and then early adulthood, that is 19 to 30 years old, then middle age, 30 to 60-year old, then later maturity years are considered from 60 years old and over. All right, so let's understand from there. Having us recognize that each human has three sources for developmental tasks, which are tasks that arises from physical maturation: learning to walk, learning to talk, control of bowel and urine, behaving in an acceptable manner to opposite sex, adjusting to menopause. Then tasks that arise from personal values, choosing an occupation, figuring out one's philosophical outlook. So these are different sources that we are discussing. So tasks that have their source in the pressures of society, learning to read, learning to be responsible citizen as well. Now let's discuss what are the developmental tasks in different stages. So let's talk about 0 to 6 years, that is infancy and childhood. So in this stage, the learner is expected, or the human being is expected, learning to walk, crawl, take solid food, and then talk. Now, just imagine, students, if these tasks are not completed in this stage, what would happen? Definitely, it shows you the importance of developmental tasks at particular stage. Then getting control over the elimination of body waste, learning sex differences and sexual modesty as well. Then getting ready to read, study is also one of the developmental tasks during 0 to 6 years. And then it's also about the stage of forming concepts. Different concepts are formed during this stage, and learning language to describe social and physical reality as well. So, understand, students, that if the child is of 0 to 6 years, the society has some set norms that how the child is learning in this stage and how the particular child is growing, that has to be kept in mind. So it's really very important that how a child is growing, it should be very clear. So students, one must be very clear with the idea that in a particular age, particular task must be completed. That is the overall concept about these developmental tasks given by Robert James Havighurst. So, if the child is actually doing all these tasks which are shown on your screen, the child is walking without any uncomfort, and the child is running as well in this stage, and child is able to eat now. child is able to communicate. So these are the developmental tasks must be done in this stage only. Clear, students? So I hope you are understanding. Now let's understand the different next stage that goes with age 6 years to 18 years, that the child is expected, or the human being is expected to learn to get along with age mates. Physical skills are really very necessary for ordinary games. It means psychomotor skills must be developed in time. Building wholesome attitude towards oneself as a growing organism is also one of the important tasks. So, appropriate masculine or feminine social role, developing concepts necessary for everyday living is also very important. So, developing conscience, morality, and a scale of values, these are some important ethical values which must be developed during this stage. So, achieving personal independence as well, not being dependent on others for the small work. This is expected from this particular stage. So, this is also leading towards developing different attitudes towards social groups and attitudes and situations, as well as institutions. Now, let's talk about age 18 to 30, what we expect from this age, that what the human being must learn, what the human being must do. So, at this stage, we expect that human beings are achieving a masculine or feminine social role. Women are understanding what they have to do being women, and men are also understanding what they have to do being men in the society. And it is also related with the accepting one's physique and using the body effectively in that manner. So achieving new and more mature relations, society relations with age mates of both sexes actually expected from this age to develop. And plus to that, achieving emotional independence of parents and other adults. So this is also very important in this stage, that emotional independence is really very important. So what is emotional independence? That now the control is not in the hands of parents or any other elder. So emotions are being controlled by the individual himself. Not only controlled, but they are also expressed in the right manner. So, in this age, it is also expected to be prepared for marriage and family life, acquiring a set of values and an ethical system as a guide to behavior. So, desiring and achieving socially responsible behavior as well. So, selecting an occupation as well. Now, let's understand about age 30 to 40 years. What it is expected from the human being to do. Developmental tasks given by Robert Havighurst clearly indicate that this should be done like selecting a mate, learning to live with a partner, starting a family, rearing children, managing home, getting started in occupation, taking on civic responsibility as well, finding a congenial social group. These are all the tasks, students, which must be actually learned and in the process while the human being in the age of 30 to 40. So these are the developmental tasks must be done in this age only. If it is getting delayed, then rest of the life will also be get affected. All right. So now it's about age 40 to 60. So what does this age is requiring for developmental tasks? So it is assisting teenage children to become responsible and happy adults. Achieving adult social and civic responsibility is also important in this age as well. Now you must have noticed, students, that some of the developmental tasks were at the initiative process in the previous stage, but now they are being carried on in the later on stages also. Like achieving adult social and civic responsibility, we have discussed it in the age group 30 to 40 as well. But it is being continued now. Reaching and maintaining satisfactory performance in one's occupational career is also very important. So, developing adult leisure time activities is also important task in this stage. Relating oneself to one's spouse as a person, then to accept and adjust to the physiological changes of middle age, and as well adjusting to aging parents. So, I hope you have understood that in what way these age appropriate tasks must be developed by the human being in a particular stage only. Then 60 and over, what we Robert Havighurst says about that. So it is expected from the human being to adjust to decreasing physical strength and health as well. Then adjusting to retirement and reduced income, adjusting to death of a spouse. So establishing an explicit affiliation with a one's age group, adopting and adapting social roles in a very flexible way. And it is also expected from 60 over people that they are establishing satisfactory physical living arrangements. Now, for examples, we can take in this 8 task of which Robert Havinger speaks, it is important to know how to recognize what have we done as persons. We know that for all of us, it can happen in different ages and or circumstances in life. So, in the age when is found that you have already made 3 tasks that are accepting your own body and learn to use it, we think that since children we have already accepted us as we are and without any complex. The second one is to train new and mature relationships with peers of both sexes that have developed it or it at the time we started to interact with others, and usually occurs when we already entered into a classroom to interact with people, and you have to adapt and learn to live with your colleagues as well. So third task is to adopt a male or female sexual role. Here usually everyone have already defined their role, and at the same time they took the role given by society. So we as teachers must identify, it's our basic responsibilities to students. So with that which students have already begun to accomplish these age appropriate tasks from those who are more advanced. And if we don't help these students, they are going to be like having us says there will be some people who failed that could not develop these tasks and their life will not have the security to resolve it. So in these times, we as teachers must be counselors and a guide in the life of the student as well. All right, so it is very important role of a teacher, that how the teacher is going to identify, how the teacher is going to rectify all the things. Now let's have an overview of developmental tasks, which I'm going to tell you in a very nutshell, like early adulthood in 19 to 30 years. So selecting a mate is really a developmental task, important task in this age. Learning to live with a partner, starting a family, rearing children, managing home, starting an occupation, assuming civic responsibility as well. Then middle adulthood, 30 to 60, is about helping teenage children to become happy and responsible adults. And then achieving adult social and civic responsibility. And there must be satisfactory career achievement as well. Then developing adults' leisure time activities. So, relating to one's spouse as a person and accepting the physiological changes in the middle age and adjusting to aging parent also. Then in later maturity period, which is about 60 and above years, so it is about adjusting to decreasing strength and health. because this is the time when the young age strength and energy is no more in the body, and it has to be adjusted now with the getting old. So adjusting to retirement and reduced income, adjusting to death of spouse, establishing relationships with one's own age group, meeting social and civic obligations as well, establishing satisfactory living quarters. Then now let's sum up, students, that Havighurst's developmental task is to explain about how the problems are faced by us, faced by everyone in the different stages of life, how we react, and how it is really very important for all of us to understand that a particular age is explaining something, and particular age is expecting some important task to be done by the learner or the human being, so that the later life will be more focused, will be more comfortable. So there are different stages of in the life, and every stage gets comfort with the previous stage achievement. So this is how Havighurst is also coming up to this idea that we can all relate that biology has some kind of effects in our development, as well as psychology and society. So one thing Havinger seems to miss is that his solution to these problems. And it is not so clear in the theory how we sort out these problems. So when it comes to if his theory is scientific, it is hard to say. Some part of the theory can be tested, and equally some parts are very difficult to test. So how we are going to do that, that's really matter of concern for such a great extent. So students, we must understand the developmental tasks are really such a concept that occupies middle ground between two opposed theories of education: the theory of freedom, that the child will develop best if left as free as possible. All right, I hope you are understanding. And the theory of constraint, and it says that the child must learn to become a worthy, responsible adult through restraints imposed by his society. So a developmental task is a midway between an individual need and societal demand. Moreover, it assumes an active learner interactive with an active social environment. So, from examining the changes in your own lifespan, you can see that critical tasks arise at certain times in our lives. And if we master these tasks, then the mastery of these tasks is satisfying and encouraging us to go on to the new challenges of life, new challenges of that particular stage. So, difficulty with them slows the progress of any individual towards future accomplishment and towards the goals as well. So, as a mechanism for understanding and changes that occur during the lifespan. So, Robert Havighurst in 1952, 72, and 82 has critically identified the developmental tasks that occur throughout the lifespan. And although our interpretation of these tasks manually change over the years and with new research findings as well. So having us developmental tasks offer lasting testimony to the belief that we continue to develop throughout our lives. So having us defines a developmental task as one that arises as a at a certain period in our lives, the successful achievement of which leads to happiness and success with later tasks. So, while leads to unhappiness as well, social disapproval if not achieved, and difficulty with later tasks. So, Havighurst uses slightly different age groupings, but the basic divisions are quite similar to those which are normal in their growth and development. So, basically, Havighurst identifies three sources which we have talked about. First, task that arises from physical maturation. Secondly, the task that from personal sources, that is psychologically also. Then third is tasks that have their sources in the pressures of society. All right. So the tasks that arise from physical maturation, for example, like learning to walk, talk, and behave acceptably with the opposite sex during adolescent, adjusting to menopause during the middle age, and the tasks that from arise from personal sources, for example those that emerge from that maturing personality and take from the personal values and aspirations as well, such as learning the necessary skills for job success. Then there are some tasks which have their sources from the pressures of society. They are being done only with the pressure of the society. If there is no pressure, then believe me, they are not going to arise. They are not going to develop. And for example, learning to read or learning the role of responsible citizen, learning about the constitution. So these are the tasks which arise from the pressure of the society as well. So we can say, according to Robert Havighurst, that according to our biopsychosocial model, the first source corresponds to the bio part of the model, second is psycho, third is social. So, biopsychosocial aspect. I hope you are understanding. Biology, psychology, sociology. These three sources combine and give a beautiful term, that is biopsychosocial model of developmental tasks. Havighurst has identified the developmental tasks according to biopsychosocial model and given the six major age periods. All right, students, and we have seen six stages, like first infancy and early childhood, then middle childhood, adolescence, early childhood, middle adulthood, then later maturity. So we can say that the child is learning, or the human being is learning a particular task in a particular period. So it has to be done in that way only. So I hope you are understanding that how it is developed in a particular stage and particular period. So it's really very important for all of us to understand that. So, having a theory is easy to understand. It's nothing very difficult. As I have given you, told you one term, bio, psychosocial. So it is the sources are coming from these three main sources. Main information is coming. Main pressure is coming that the person is able to do some particular task, and it is clear that there is no ambiguity in Havighurst's theory. He has clearly given the particular task in a particular age. So it is not applicable to many cultures, as he concentrated only on middle classes Americans. So it is said about Havighurst in criticism. So in reference to his developmental task, Miriam and Kefrela in 1991 state that although the time frame and some of the tasks suggested by Robert Havighurst are somewhat presently applicable, the idea of specific life task giving rise to a teachable moment is not. So it is disappointing that not many theorists are influenced by his theory. But we can surely be assured that Robert Havighurst's theory is a wonderful theory of developmental tasks, and we must believe that there are some tasks which must be completed in a particular stage only. So students, these are some references and for your more study purpose, and I believe that you are going to explore them and you will understand Robert Havighurst in a more clear way. Now let's have MCQs. All right, now the question starts with number one. A mother complains that her 13-year-old has started to grow rapidly and asks the nurse if this is normal and how long it will last. The best nursing response is no. Option A. This is unusual at this age and a physician should be contacted. Option B. This is normal but will only last a few months. Option C. This is normal and can last until about age 20. Option D says this is normal and can last until about age 18. Option E, this is normal, but growth should be completed by about age 15 or 16. Now, students, write the correct option in my comment box and just tell me what could be the right answer by remembering the important age characteristics of 13 years old. All right, so this is a small hint to you. Now, the next question, the developmental task model was developed by option A, Robert Havighurst, B, John Havighurst, C, Erickson, D, Sigmund Freud, or E, none of them are correct. So option A, what we have studied till now, that Robert Havighurst gave us the developmental task model. Next question is about a 7-year-old who is learning to make friends. 7-year-old. So this is in which age? Middle childhood, later maturity, middle adulthood, early childhood, and adolescent. So the correct answer was B, option A, middle childhood. So students, I really believe that you have learned a lot from today's lecture about growth and development of human being, and particularly we have discussed about developmental tasks of learners in different stages, and these different stages demand the achievement of particular kind of task in particular stage only. So I really hope that you have understood the six stages, sources, characteristics of Robert Havighurst developmental task model. So, students, this is the end of the class now, and I believe that you will keep revising the concept and will get mastery over it. All right. So, see you in the next class, students. Till then, stay safe, stay happy, and keep learning. Thank you, students.